Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason, Howell, and I first kick things off by talking to Solana Larsen of the Mozilla Foundation. Solana is the editor of the 2022 Internet Health Report and talks about AI and its involvement in the health of the internet. Then we talk to Max Cherney of Protocol, who joins us to explain what in the world chiplets are and how they might be the future of chip design. Before we round things out with our stories of the week, first, DALL-E 2 is officially available, well, in beta to be tested by anyone who wants to join and pay a little bit of money. And then Amazon, which has just purchased One Medical for $3.9 billion. We talk about how big tech is dipping its toes and perhaps its hands and other parts into the health industry. Stay tuned. We've got a great show.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 244, recorded Thursday, July 21st, 2022.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Certain people make my life easier by helping me out, and ZipRecruiter makes hiring easier because they do the work for you. How? Well, ZipRecruiter's technology finds great candidates and you can invite them to apply. Go to ziprecruiter.com/TNW to try it for free.
And by Infrascale. Infrascale delivers industry-leading data protection through backup and disaster recovery. Whatever your data or environment, Infrascale provides continuity and resiliency for your business. Visit infrascale.com/TWiT to get the free ebook, 5 Essential Components of a Ransomware Protection Plan, and learn how to protect your business today.
And by Checkout.com. Modern businesses need flexible payment systems that can help them adapt to change, grow, and scale fast. Discover how Checkout.com can help your business thrive at checkout.com/TNW. Hello, and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah, Sargent.
I'm the other guy, Jason Howell, coming to you live from the corner of my bedroom again.
Yes. I feel for you, Jason. I am very comfortably sitting in a chair in my office, and I've got lots. Ooh, look at all this room I've got.
Look at all that room. No,
I'm just sort of in the corner there.
Yeah, there's nowhere for me to go but out there into the rest of the room. Yes, this is just the scenario that I've painted for myself. But that's okay. At least I have this. Could be worse, I suppose.
Could be worse.
Let's jump in to our first interview. Artificial intelligence. AI is just a topic that continues to fascinate me because I feel like more and more AI is being touted as the solution to so many problems, right? So much power, so much potential, so much disruption in its wake. Who, though, does it benefit the most? And the nonprofit Mozilla Foundation actually published a report on Monday that details the winners and the losers of this march toward AI-powered systems. Solana Larsen is the editor of the 2022 Internet Health Report and actually joins us now to talk about that report. Welcome, Solana.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, it's great to get you here. I love the background. It pops. Looks awesome. Appreciate you. So first of all, this isn't the first internet health report that Mozilla has released. Is this the first one that so heavily discusses or dissects the power and the influence of artificial intelligence, or is this just kind of a now thing?
Yeah, this is the first time that we're even just like picking one topic and focusing on just that, because for the past 4 editions, this is the 5th edition that we're doing now, we've really taken a broad view of what does it even mean for the internet to be healthy, and healthy for people, and thinking of it as being something that can be either unhealthy or healthy as an ecosystem or even both at once. It's really about looking at what are the root causes for things like hate speech or disinformation or, the fact that half of the world almost is still not online. Those kinds of big questions about the internet, and then thinking about how do we fix them? What are some of the different things that people are actively doing to make things better, make it healthier? And so with AI, I think we have this urgency right now, this moment where we see like all of the things that are most unhealthy about the internet, we see that magnified in AI. and vice versa. I think there's also an element of where AI can also make the internet healthier or less healthy as well. So one topic this year, and we go deep.
Well, and I think if you're going to pick one topic to go deep on, and especially at this moment in time, AI really seems ripe for the picking, right? Like I said in the kind of the top introduction, I feel like artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, all this stuff is being constantly used as the savior, kind of the superpower that's being injected into technology, the thing that we didn't have before, and we had all these problems, and then now we've got AI to save the day. But this report is really about caution, and it really seems to shed a light on why caution is needed. Maybe explain a little bit of that as AI is used, is presented as this powerful thing that shifts paradigms. What does that potentially lead to?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like a system of power in itself, because when you deploy AI to make decisions about things that affects people's lives, that is a system of power that's being exercised. And the other thing that we see is that it's making the ones who have power more powerful. I mean, it requires an enormous amount of resources to actually use AI at a large scale. So when you look at, for instance, the influence of big tech or how tech is growing, big tech is growing more and more powerful, a lot of that has to do with AI. I mean, if you look at a company like Amazon or any of the other big tech companies, and you look at their revenue, and you look at how they make money in different ways, AI is crucial to their business operations in every way. And so when you have the powerful using this as part of their toolkit, and they're also influencing so much of how we think about how we use it. Like, how do we collect the data that then gets, used in AI systems? How do we behave? What do we expect it to do? When so much of the discourse is also decided by those who have power over it, it becomes this, self-reinforcing mechanism where I think it's important to say, hang on, let's step back, let's talk about who has power, who's getting to decide how these things work, who's getting to be more powerful, by using these technologies.
Yeah, indeed. Now, one of the things that's kind of that I've noticed in this march, down the path of AI over the recent years, anyways, and potentially a pretty troubling aspect, especially in light of the report, is that much of what's happening behind the scenes is very hidden. And I don't necessarily mean, perhaps, there is technology companies that know a lot but aren't sharing it. But the inherent nature of AI is that the computer, the algorithm itself, is making determinations, it's making decisions on its own. And it's not like a batch of code that you can say, oh, this is the code that led to this. It's the system that kind of has created this. So how does that kind of lack of transparency tie into what you detail in this report?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of it's made to feel magic or like a dark art, or I think there's this. It's all kind of wrapped up in this tendency of excluding people from joining this conversation. Like, who should be allowed to have an opinion about AI? And when you have, very powerful elite kind of forces signaling, you are not smart enough to talk about this, or you are not a computer scientist, you cannot talk about this, it gets very difficult to have a discourse. But if I'm experiencing harm from your AI system, then I know something about it that you don't know about it, even if you designed it, even if you're a computer scientist. And so I think it is this importance of making the systems more transparent, making them more understandable to users themselves so that they can also help control them and gauge them, and then have a certain amount of, I think what we're experiencing right now is just an enormous amount of hubris about just demanding that people trust that these technologies do the things that they're supposed to be doing. And then when people say that they aren't, are they actually listened to? Too often they're not. And those are some of the things that we really need to fix.
Well, and of course, one easy example of that is Timnit Gebru at Google, who AI ethicist, computer scientist, working on that algorithmic bias, and inside of Google, inside of Alphabet, and then of course, had the very big kind of fallout as a result of that, which kind of sheds light on this idea that like big tech knows, is creating this system, right? They're putting their funding into the academic research that proves this technology is safer and everything. But then when there is a voice inside that calls a warning, something happens to that voice, and that seems to go counter to this idea of bringing ethics into AI, which many would agree, and I totally agree, is that now is the time to do that effectively. If it's not done effectively now, what it builds out and develops into later becomes a much bigger hill to climb, to overcome if it goes in bad directions.
That's exactly right. And it's inside companies where you have people raising the alarm, and it's also outside companies. I mean, you have groups like Mozilla, you have consumers, you have people on YouTube users, you have, it's not even just in the realm of big tech. You also have this, predictive policing systems or facial recognition technologies that end up arresting the wrong people. And then you have groups that are saying, your system doesn't work. It's identifying the wrong people. And then, if the response is just, well, that's too bad for them, then where does that take us? I think we're implementing more and more of these technologies in more and more crucial parts of society. And it's not just in the United States or in Europe or it's everywhere. In the entire world, everybody's doing this. And it's in every single business, type, every kind of sector, business sector is affected by AI. Every government is using AI in some way or other. It's, changing how we deal with communication and information. So we need to talk about this together differently and come to some better ways and mechanisms of making sure that it doesn't harm people.
Yeah, no question. I mean, a lot of the systems that, we talk about on this network, have to do with like YouTube and the recommendation engines and everything. And I mean, I can speak to YouTube, AI working behind the scenes for its recommendation. Let's be honest, those systems often take, actual people into a place that they regret going eventually. And maybe it wasn't their choice, or the recommendation algorithm, is spun up on this idea that just as one example, outrage gets attention. Outrage keeps people connected. And so they end up, being presented with this content that they didn't want. But now it's like they've been pulled into this realm where they're interacting and engaging with it because it's not good where they ended up, and they don't want to be there, or they're engaging with it because now suddenly they know this thing exists. And how culpable is the technology, is the AI behind the scenes that does that? There's incentive there, though, right? Like that's kind of the challenge. The tricky part is companies have the incentive to keep people engaged, and so these systems are doing what they're designed to do. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it would be possible. There would be possible for things to work better for everybody. I think there would be ways to work together with the research community and multilingual research communities in different parts of the world to try and figure out how to make these systems work in ways that are better. But for that to happen, these companies need to open up and need to share information in a way that makes it possible to collaborate with them and to have research that's happening from the outside. We have a crowdsourcing plugin. Actually, it's called YouTube Regrets, but it's an add-on, a browser add-on extension, I think. I know, so many words. A browser extension that you can download into your browser, and then you can share your information about YouTube videos that you're watching. And then when one comes up that you regret having seen, we can analyze what was the path that took you there, Was it a recommendation? Was it something else? Let's try and reverse engineer some of these algorithms that the big companies aren't being transparent about. And there's a number of projects like that from different organizations that are trying to, from the outside, figure out what is the scale of the harm? How do we document it? How can we fix it? How can we come up with constructive solutions for making systems that work better for everybody? So yeah, I believe they have incentives to make these systems work better for everybody. We clearly need to make the incentives stronger, and maybe that happens through regulation. Maybe that happens through consumer action. But if we leave the companies to their own devices, it's clearly not going to happen because they found a way to make a lot of money without doing all those things.
Yeah, no question. Before we wrap things up, I also want to point out that this is not just a report this time around. You also launched a podcast to go along with it. So congratulations on that. Tell us a little bit about the podcast so people can check it out.
Yes, now we can be podcast friends.
That's right. We already are.
The podcast is called IRL, and it's actually a podcast that the Firefox team created and ran for several years. And yeah, we've taken it over for this special edition, which we ask in the report, who has power over AI? And then the podcast responds, and we show people in different parts of the world who are doing things differently, who are designing things in a totally different way than we've become accustomed to and we just take for granted now. And I think it will open people's eyes and say, oh yeah, we could be doing things like this, or wow, let's hear it from people who are building differently. Let's not get so scared of AI that we're just saying that it's all bad. And, it's not that we need to trash it. We just need to think about it differently. We need to research it differently and develop other incentives and create things that can actually benefit humanity. But that does require, starting from a different starting point than we have so far.
Yeah, critical analysis is key and important at the point that we're at right now. And this report definitely does a great job of pointing that out. Solana Larsen, of course, the editor of the 2022 Internet Health Report from Mozilla Foundation. Solana, if people want to find you and follow you online and the work that you're doing behind the scenes, where can they find you?
Well, the internethealthreport.org, this year's edition 2022.internethealth.report.org. And the Mozilla Foundation, we're doing lots of work, lots of research beyond the report, activism. If you want to get involved, if you want to learn more and do things on these issues, then, come find us and connect for sure.
Excellent. Solana, thank you so much for carving out a few minutes for us today. We really appreciate it.
It was delightful. Thank you.
Excellent. Talk to you soon, and best of luck with the podcast. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Solana. Up next, with Moore's Law in full effect, chip manufacturers are looking at new ways to boost performance and efficiency. Before we discuss that, though, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Certain people just make life so much easier. You don't know what you'd do without them. Maybe it's your partner, maybe it's your friend, maybe it's your personal assistant. Well, it's like if you need to grow your business. ZipRecruiter makes hiring so much easier because they do the work for you. And now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/TNW. ZipRecruiter's technology finds the right candidates for your job, and you can invite your top choices to apply. So they realize, oh, wow, this company wants me. It's so nice. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. No wonder ZipRecruiter is the #1 rated hiring site based on G2 ratings as of January 1st, 2022. The hardest thing you have to do is to remember that special URL to try ZipRecruiter for free. It's ziprecruiter.com/TNW. Again, that's ziprecruiter.com/TNW. Thank you so much to ZipRecruiter for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, so chips are obviously at the base of the different devices that we have. You know, my iPhone here, my Mac that's running all of this stuff that I'm running, and all sorts of different devices that we have. And, you know, we've heard about chip shortages lately and all of that, but there's a larger concern about the future of chip manufacturing and the future, the way that things are going to look as we continue to try to make faster and faster and faster chips and smaller and smaller and smaller chips. And now we've got chip manufacturers looking at some alternative methods of making that possible. Joining us today to talk about where chip manufacturing seems to be headed is Protocol's Max Cherney. Thank you so much for joining us, Max.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you here. So let's dig in first, because this, of course, is kind of the basis of your piece, is this word chiplet. And when I first heard chiplet, I just imagined a tiny little chicken that sort of pranced around. But I know it's not that. This is something else. Or maybe a tortilla chip broken into pieces. Those are chiplets. Anyway, how do chiplets differ from the die process that manufacturers use today?
Well, it's really a simple concept. Essentially, instead of printing chips on one sort of large die, manufacturers and chip designers are breaking up those large dies into smaller pieces, and it really is that simple.
Well, good. I'm glad it's very simple. That helps me kind of, because now everybody in the chat is saying, I was thinking of chiclets, the candy. Yes. So chiplets are just smaller pieces that make up a larger whole. So then if this is the way of things, or the way that at least AMD has gone with things, I'm curious what makes chiplets better, according to AMD, than the current method of chip design, the one that we've got right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one key thing I should add to when you're thinking about a chiplet is that it is the chiplets, the different little dies are stitched together, and that's a really important thing because they all sort of work together in the same way that a normal, like a large chip would work, except they're stitched together with very, very complicated interconnect technology. So to AMD, it's kind of an interesting thing. For AMD, chiplets were more or less a necessity. That's basically why they started to build them. And they are in their eyes, they're a better chip design method because they are about 40% cheaper because of the way manufacturing works. And the other thing that it allowed AMD to do was to compete directly with Intel. And remember, this was back in 2015 when Intel was the dominant sort of server chip maker. And AMD was going through a period of transformation, I think is a polite way to put it, after they spun out their manufacturing business, which is now known as Global Foundries. And essentially, AMD was trying to figure out a way to compete with Intel's server offerings. And Intel makes, I don't know exactly the number then, but it was a handful, maybe half a dozen or more different server chips to serve different markets within the data center segment. Low end chips, mid range chips, high end chips, the whole bit. And AMD didn't have the R&D budget to make that number of sort of separate designs to serve each one of those markets. And to put a little context around that, it costs roughly $500 million to develop a design for an advanced processor these days. I don't know what the costs were like then, but it's expensive is my point. So in the way AMD put it was that it basically had sort of one bullet to shoot. And so the way that it solved this problem was, instead of trying to make, a half a dozen different chip designs, it took its single server chip design and broke it into 4 different pieces. And by doing that, they could sort of add and take away chiplets to make different server products. And then I think the last advantage that AMD would say it had is that just breaking up the chip into different pieces allowed it to take 2 of them away altogether and create a desktop chip from that same sort of design. And their desktop segment at the time was the most profitable. So they were very excited that they would, get to turn a big profit off of that. So there are a lot of different advantages, but I think those are just a few of the ways that AMD would argue that chiplets are a better way to design chips.
So if I could sort of enlarge this, is this similar to the idea that I could buy a Windows PC, and inside of the Windows PC, I have, the processor, and I've got my video card, and I've got some RAM, and I've got, a sound card, and as time elapses, the processor is just fine. It's still top of the line, but I can now afford to add more RAM instead of however much I have right now. So I can pop out the RAM that's in there, put in new RAM. I can then later on, when we add Dolby surround sound, I can pop out the sound card that's in there and pop that in. Is this modular in that way? Is that the idea, that we break up the different parts of the chip and replace them as they get better while keeping some things the same?
Oh, yeah, sort of. Okay, so it's conceptually pretty similar, but not modular in the same way that you could pop out a video card and replace it with whatever new NVIDIA thing is the latest and greatest best card. Once you manufacture a chiplet, or I should say a chip with chiplets inside of a package, you've pretty much got the product. And you can't hot swap them, that I'm aware of. But what it does allow designers to do is to do what you were just talking about, which is when there's like a more advanced sound, say just for example, sound card or a GPU or some sort of video processor, or today it's more likely that might be an AI accelerator of some kind, is to be able to add the newest version of that while keeping the other components in the package the same.
So instead of having to completely redesign that whole chip, they can just add the parts that have seen an update since the last time they designed the chip.
That's right. Or make sense to make an update too. For example, you don't have to use the most advanced manufacturing process to make every component on the current kind of chip that somebody like Intel makes. It's just not necessary. So and in some cases it can actually make it harder to continue to shrink. I don't want to get too technical, but basically it doesn't make sense for every chip to continue to use the most advanced manufacturing method.
Got it. Now, AMD has been using this method since 2015, as you talked about in your protocol piece. But I'm curious, given that this seems to kind of be where everyone's looking at chiplets, have the other big chip manufacturers started using this method as well? And are there any that aren't?
So Intel is already using it. I should take one step back and say that some of the chip makers they make chips called field programmable gate arrays. They're called FPGAs. They're basically just programmable chips. They have been using this method for a while in a sort of similar way. So Intel has been making this for a while because they make these FPGAs as well. For its upcoming server and desktop chips, they've adopted this. They call them tiles, but they're going to start using them. In terms of people that don't, I think the most obvious example is NVIDIA, and there's a very specific reason, because they're the chips that they're well known for, as I'm sure everybody knows, is their graphics chips that are also very useful for AI acceleration, and they don't want to make chiplets because it just doesn't really make sense for those kinds of workloads. For that type of compute, they're basically just rendering like one big thing at a time, and it doesn't really make sense to try to split that compute task up onto multiple different dies. And dies that's just another way of saying like a chiplet. So NVIDIA doesn't do it, and they don't really have any plans to, at least in the foreseeable future. Their plan is actually just to take their already very large chips, their already large dies, and stitch those big ones together. They have a special technology that they do it with, and they're even planning in the longer run to stick a CPU together with a GPU. I think that's 2023, but let's just keep that between you and I.
That sounds good. Now, all of this is ultimately a focus on kind of running up against a choke point where, we see these 5 nanometer, 4 nanometer, it keeps dropping. And at the same time, we're looking at trying to improve upon performance, improve upon processing power. How specifically do chiplets address this choke point, this upcoming choke point that everyone's kind of worried about?
So, I think the easiest way to think about it is that for the longest time, it was sort of practical to continue to add more features onto a chip, onto a die, and doubly when because of this thing Moore's law. And a number of other factors I should add. The features themselves and the transistors that make a chip do what it does keep getting smaller. So on the one hand, you could make chips bigger, and then everything on them was getting smaller. So that those two things working in conjunction, and this is very sort of high level, but those two things working in conjunction have allowed us to make chips, that power your iPhone, as you were mentioning earlier, and do all sorts of other stuff. But that is sort of. That idea has kind of run its course. It's become very difficult and expensive to continue to make dies larger. And having said that, there's also like a technical limit. We just can't print chips beyond a certain size, and that's called the reticle limit. It's and it has to do with photolithography and the way that chips are sort of printed onto each silicon wafer. And I can get into that if you'd like.
Yeah, so that was actually going to be my next question. We have a pretty nerdy audience, and so it's okay for you to get into that, because photolithography seems to be the thing that because of the way that it works, it's kind of holding things back. Or again, you're going to do a better explanation. I had just learned on an episode of Tech News Weekly about how the photolithography locations are typically painted yellow because it helps to keep certain spectrum of light from affecting the dye process. So I'm always learning new things. And so, yeah, tell us a little bit about, the what did you say, the reticle limit?
Yeah, And the yellow thing is to protect this thing called the photoresist. It's actually really interesting that the lighting in all the fabs is typically yellow. So the thing that we're talking about here is essentially the blueprint that we use to print the chip onto a silicon wafer, and the size of that blueprint is just. We can only make it so far, anyways, a roughly 850 millimeter square. And as a result, we have to come up with other ways to make chips faster. We can't move them beyond this limit. The other thing too is that when you start to get to that large 850 millimeter square size, chips. The actual output of a manufacturer, the yield per silicon wafer, so the number of good chips per wafer, starts to decrease, because if you think about it, so when you print a wafer with any kind of chip on it, just imagine you're going to have like a certain number of defects. I don't know what that number is, but just right. So it's just, you're going to have there's going to be some errors. So when you make the die sizes larger, it's more likely that there's going to be an error on each die, if that makes sense.
Yikes.
Right. So that's like the fundamental issue with that works together with this reticle size that makes it really, really tough to print bigger and bigger chips.
So then that you're reducing the risk if you go the chiplet way versus going that, bigger and bigger. That makes sense. Yeah, we would want to not have run the risk of having more errors and then having to make more, and then everything just crumbles from there. Now, I thought it was super interesting that Gordon Moore seemed to have predicted this change in the industry all the way back in 1965, as you pointed out in the piece. Can you talk about the prediction that Moore made at the time that goes into, it was the second half of Moore's law that I hadn't really heard about?
Sure, absolutely. It was a very important paper that he wrote for lots of different reasons, as you know. And by the way, on the cost savings, that's what AMD is referring to. The 40% number I said earlier, that refers to yield. That's why the chips are so much cheaper, because so the more defects, the more expensive each chip becomes. Right, because there's fewer good ones. Okay, so anyways, to your question on Moore, I'm gonna read the quote, because I think Gordon Moore's it's always worth hearing what he has to say, and it may prove to be more economical to build large systems out of smaller functions, which are separated, packaged, and interconnected, he said. The availability of large functions combined with the functional design and construction should allow the manufacturer of large systems to design and construct a considerable variety of equipment both rapidly and economically. So that's what he said. And that at the time, it was kind of interesting because IBM was actually building systems that used this chiplet concept, I think as early as 1964. So I don't know exactly where Moore got the idea, but it sort of illustrates the point that the idea of interconnecting different components of a semiconductor, different semiconductors, is a very old idea. And we've kind of sort of gone from that, that point to what you were talking about earlier, that the systems on chip, right? The iPhone chip has a whole bunch of different types of semiconductors, sort of squished into one. Modern PCs do too. Your MacBook does, and all that sort of thing. And sort of this idea of chiplets is essentially breaking up that SoC, that system on chip, into different constituent parts, but still within the same package.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, it seems like, given that, and given you mentioned some letters earlier, and I'm forgetting FPGA. It seems like if IBM was working on it back then, that there's kind of this cycling between these eras where we've got periods of time where chiplets played some role, and I guess even to this day they play some role. And then we've got the SoCs. Now with Apple taking one SoC and one SoC, and then having an interconnect between the two of them with the Ultra inside of the Mac Studio. And so I'm curious, do you, as a person who's covering this stuff, do you think the chip manufacturing industry will settle on chiplets as the way of the future, or do you think that there is a possibility that we could see a return to that die-based design? Or is it just kind of like, we have never been able to figure out the reticle limit, and we've never been able to figure out this and that, and so this is the end of this technology. We've got to move on to something else like the chiplet design?
Well, I mean, let me just get my crystal ball out here, because that always works well. My future predictions. I mean, in terms of adopting chiplets, I think it's pretty clear that at least for CPUs, for processors, we're going to have to more or less adopt this particular technology in order to continue to make them faster and more efficient, for all the reasons we have been talking about. It doesn't make any sense to try to squish all of these features like a wireless radio and other things, onto a single die. Having said that, I mean, Apple's squishing two chips together is a pretty smart idea. So maybe they've got some magic ability to continue to make these big die chips. I really don't know the answer to that. And as I said, for NVIDIA, the big die chips, for the moment at least, are the future. And there are some companies that are making chips the size of wafers too at this point to deal with some of the more complex tasks related to artificial intelligence computing. So I think for certain aspects of the chip industry, I think it's a foregone conclusion. Like I said, CPUs, I think it's almost a no-brainer. Everybody is moving in that direction. But for other types of processing and for other types of compute, I think it's a little less certain.
And then lastly, let's get as nerdy as we possibly can. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about, and I quote, Universal Chiplet Interconnect Express, or UCIe. What is that?
I mean, it's actually, again, it's like the chiplets themselves. It's a pretty simple concept. The idea is just to make a common way to connect chiplets inside of a single package. And I mean, it's kind of like PCI or PCIe, the way that you can connect things to a motherboard and connect different components on a regular computer. And the advantage, I mean, the really cool thing about it is not so much in the technical details in terms of how it works, but it's the fact that in the longer run, the promise of this is very, very cool, because not only it'll allow, of course, course, it's a good business opportunity for the likes of AMD and Intel or anybody else interested in chiplets, because say you have a big customer that maybe like a Google or an Amazon. These are just examples. This is not anything to do with my reporting, that has a specific compute workload they want to tackle. Like maybe Google's trying to do something with AI. Intel could put some specific like Google IP, like Google chips that it's designed, or chiplets that it's designed, into a package with other chips made by, maybe there's one from Intel, or maybe there's some memory made by a company called Micron or whatever, and then package those together and then sell that as sort of a custom solution. So that's sort of one like kind of interesting business possibility. And the other thing is it just allows, the products themselves, the chips themselves will be more interesting, because the chip designers, the big ones, will be able to take other people's chips or chiplets and then stick them together onto a package. And again, that the same sort of thing applies. It might not be AI, but you could put a wireless radio together with some DRAM and with some memory and some processing cores, and that again will just make because it'll make the chip faster and better, which is basically what everybody expects from this from silicon at this point.
Yeah, I love the idea that you've got a company that's super specialized in a specific chiplet piece, that you can get that part from them, and you can get the AI part from this other company, mm-hmm. and that it all comes together to make the actual chip that goes into the computer or phone or what have you. So yeah, that's I'm glad that they're coming up with this idea to have this interconnect that's going to work for multiple companies, and hopefully everyone will fall in line with that.
Not quite yet. We're still a few years away. Just so I'm clear, maybe this is a 2025 thing, so we haven't quite figured it out yet. But I think version 2 of the standard should get us there. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I'm hopeful then that whenever it does come time, that everybody will fall in line with that to make this possible. But I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today to join us. Of course, folks can head over to protocol.com to check out your work. But is there anywhere else they can go to follow along and see what you're doing?
The Twitter machine, I'm at Cherney, so at CHERNEYANDBU, or sorry, at CHERNANDBURN, and you can find me there. That's I tweet pretty regularly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome stuff. We've got more coming up here in a moment. In fact, coming up, I've got my story of the week. DALL-E 2 is hitting more users. Speaking of artificial intelligence, we're going to talk all about that. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Infrascale. The statistics for ransomware attacks, I mean, we talk about it all the time on this show, definitely on Security Now, so ransomware is a big deal already, but it's pretty alarming. Cybercriminals can penetrate up to 93% of company networks, according to betanews.com. And it's not just large organizations either. 46% of small to medium-sized businesses have been victims of ransomware attacks. So this is everywhere. The Infrascale cloud backup solution provides the security that you need to manage backups and secures them from hackers or these adverse events that crop up. Backup and protect your endpoint data. That's what it's all about. Never pay a ransom. And then, of course, sleep easier at night. You can back up SaaS applications. You can back up endpoints and servers, as well as execute disaster recovery on site or in the cloud. That's what you need when disaster strikes. Every company needs a secure, simple to configure, and easy to manage endpoint data protection solution. And Infrascale integrates with Hyper-V and VMware, enabling site-to-site failover with orchestration in the Infrascale cloud. So you can keep those hackers away. Its immutability is at the core of how their product is designed. Your data is encrypted in the storage, so no one can alter it from there. Whether server crash or human error, malicious activity or natural disaster, a localized or site-wide incident means unanticipated costs or unplanned downtime, neither of which are very good, both that come with a huge price. According to Gartner, the average cost of downtime across all industry sectors is $5,600 per minute. All right. That's around $300,000 per hour. Clients and partners alike, including MSPs and VARs, trust Infrascale backup and recovery solutions to eliminate downtime and to eliminate data loss with the most cost-effective enterprise-grade data protection solutions to help keep their businesses running. If disaster does strike, your applications, your data, your systems, they're all recovered and available in record time. Their award-winning world-class support is there to ensure that your business is protected 24/7 around the clock, now with SSD at no extra charge. Infrascale has a solution for your data protection needs. You should really check them out. Whatever your data, whatever your environment, Infrascale provides continuity and resiliency for your business. Visit infrascale.com/twit, and you can get the free ebook, 5 Essential Components of a Ransomware Protection Plan, and then learn how to protect your business. And you can get that started today, right now. That's infrascale.com/twit, INFRASCALE, infrascale.com/twit. And we thank Infrascale for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right. So apparently I have AI on the brain today. Started off with an interview that was all about all the nasty ways that AI can go. And then now I've got AI that actually I feel like is kind of fun, although it has its problems too. And we'll talk about that. Of course, I'm talking about DALL-E. This is the AI system that we've been seeing only a select, few people online having access to this image creation artificial intelligence system, where you can go in there and you can, basically give a sentence that describes something, and it will create imagery around that. The AI will create it dynamically, and it would be one thing if it created it and it looked bad. But what's really neat, what's interesting here is that it ends up turning out a result that's really fascinating and really good. I mean, I'm sure it could be scrutinized if you look at it close enough, but it's pretty impressive, pretty remarkable what it's able to come up with. And to date, it's been used, I think, by 100,000 select users since April, when it was kind of a very limited beta. It's been free to use so far. And now it has a wait list. You can get access. They're aiming to reach up to 1 million users in the next 2 weeks. So you want to get on that wait list if you want access. There's a few questions that ask you kind of who you are, what you do, all that kind of stuff. And then hopefully you're selected as one of the 1 million users, and you can check out DALL-E 2. And this time around, are you okay?
No, I'm not.
Did you just fall asleep, or are you angry?
No, I was growling because
Tell us why.
I've been on that wait list for so long and I'm still not in it yet. And I just want to be a part of the fun. I'm not going to do anything bad. I think if they see you're a journalist, they're like, never mind.
No, you're going to poke holes in it.
Yeah. And all I want to type in is spooky lemons. That's literally... That's been in my head for so long. I've been just thinking, I wonder what would happen whenever I type in spooky lemons. And I use some of the other fun tools from OpenAI. They've got that the GPT-3 system is super cool. In fact, I know this is a little off topic, but I just want to quickly say this. I didn't realize that they had on top of finishing sentences and finishing paragraphs and summarizing things, they've got like a TLDR, too long didn't read summary that you can do. But they also have a spreadsheet creator. And so this is the example that they give, a 2-column spreadsheet of top science fiction movies and the year of their release. And then you tell it how you want the spreadsheet to look, and then it will tell you. And so I started playing around the top 10 pop songs in the year of my birth. And so then it had the song title on the left and the year or the month of its release on the right. And then the most popular dog breeds in 2022. And I don't remember because I was making a spreadsheet with it, but I didn't realize that it could do all of that. And I am using it, whenever you sign up for the playground for OpenAI, you have to say what you are. And if you say journalist, then they say no. But if you're just using it for personal use, which is basically what I was doing, I wasn't going in to write a story on it or anything like that. So then it was okay with that. And I'm just wondering, because I have seen some folks that I know who didn't talk to 2 of the lead engineers working on, I'm going to keep making these movements. 2 of the lead engineers working on DALL-E on this very show, who signed up after I did, who got access to it. And I'm like, come on. I just want to type in spooky lemons.
Someday, I have faith. Someday you'll get to live your spooky lemon life.
In the meantime, I'll use that one that you talked about.
What was the mini DALL-E or DALL-E mini? I can't remember
DALL-E mini.
DALL-E mini. Yeah. I mean, what you get here, of course, that you don't get there if you're using DALL-E mini and it's faces of any sort, they're all like mangled and contorted and stuff. And here, I think you get kind of like as
long as they're not a celebrity. Yeah,
as long as they're not a celebrity, they're more anonymous sort of thing. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So somebody tried, somebody asked, because I was looking through different people who've gotten access, and celebrities aren't allowed. And so one person did a prompt, Hulk Hogan riding a dolphin in the Pacific Ocean, and the person went ahead and typed it into DALL-E, and the body and everything was definitely Hulk Hogan, but the face was like raw. But if you just type in a person sitting next to a bowl of spooky lemons, then it will just make a person, a face that's not anyone's real face.
Yeah, an unidentifiable, but actual face of some sort, which, I mean, AI systems are able to create, very photorealistic faces anyways. So that's probably kind of the same thing that's happening there. I wonder if you were to put someone who looks like Hulk Hogan. So at least instead of getting a mangled face, you get like a similar face, but not the same. Anyways.
I'd love to try it.
Yeah, I know. Hey, we've got ideas to test this system. So if we ever get access to this, it will be a credit-based system going forward, and it refills every month. So if you're doing this for free, so essentially 1 credit equals 1 text prompt that's sent to the AI. And as we know from DALL-E Mini or DALL-E 2 Mini or whatever it was, like, not every text prompt is going to result in usable images. You might get the results and be like, okay, that didn't really turn out that great. You might do 10 of them and finally get the one that's like, oh, jackpot, that's the one we were looking for. So, you get 50 free credits for the first month, 15 free credits every month thereafter, which could not be that much depending on how you want to use this. You can purchase additional credits at $15 for 115 credits. So for $15, you get 115 tries. So that gives you a sense of kind of like how, what you're going to spend if you're maybe planning on using this in your business or whatever, which, by the way, you can do. This grants full usage rights, commercialization included. So reprinting, selling, merchandise rights, all of that included with the images that you create through DALL-E, which is very interesting. And they are also pointing out, the beta has been useful for getting the word out, but it's also been useful for, and this ties into the interview that we had earlier with Solana, it has been returning some results that, let's just say, show examples of bias, like racial bias or gender bias. For example, CEOs and firefighters were all coming back as white men. And then teachers and nurses were all coming back as white women. And so, people over that beta period were recognizing this, telling OpenAI about this, and then OpenAI has integrated a data set that includes more globally diversified samples. So as a result, 12 times more likely to include diverse results. So that's better. That's an improvement. Although it is kind of, they're doing other things like filtering and censoring what people ask for, because obviously people can be awful at times. And so they go in there asking for really bad things. And OpenAI says, we're filtering and censoring what people ask for as issues crop up. Ultimately, that's a Band-Aid, right? That's something that's very reactive, and hopefully they can figure that out over time. But interesting nonetheless. And I think, we talked about this a little bit. I was filling in for Leo on This Week in Google yesterday, and we talked a lot about DALL-E and this whole opening of the waitlist and everything. And I think what really is compelling to me, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, is as these systems get more and more believable or more and more, photorealistic or whatever you want to call it, like these things are really effective already, but they still have holes and they're only going to get better. What does this do long term for the creator economy, for the digital creator economy, when I can go to a tool and tell it to give me the thing? And it might not be perfect. It might not be exactly what I want the first time, but if I've got credits and I can do it 10 times, then great, that's great. Instead of hiring a person, Ant was very, very much on board with this, with the idea that, the human element is incredibly important to this. And I'm not saying I don't believe that. I totally believe that as well. But at a certain point, these systems get so good that, maybe there is a point down the line where the human experience is less important. What do you think?
So this is a tough one, because I do think to a certain extent that for a lot of in certain situations, it makes so much more sense to use photos created by human beings or that were literally captured in real life by human beings, photographers. But I think about, I used to work for a startup, and at that startup, we wrote articles that got turned into videos. And for the videos, we needed to have things on screen. When the anchor wasn't on the camera saying things, then it cut to the article sometimes with a quote pulled from it.
Yeah.
But then it also cut to images. And we did everything in our power to do that correctly, meaning that we would bend over backward to go find things in Creative Commons usage, in all of these different places where we were allowed to use the image, and it was very strict, the rules and guidelines around what images could be used and could not be used. And I remember when we finally got a Getty Images subscription, and it was earth-shattering in the way that it made so much more available to us. Everything got so much easier. However, because of the way that the subscription is set up, you can only use so many photos in a given period of time, and it's very expensive. And so you may not always have the opportunity to make use of that. And so I think about people with blogs, for example, individuals who have small companies that are trying to report on things. The protocol article that we looked at earlier, where it had that really clever design at the top of, it looked like a pack of gum from Protocol that said 6 chiplets, and then the word fresh was kind of cut off on the side, and you slide out and you could see the little chiplets inside, but it's almost like they were Chiclets gum. The idea that instead of having to, and again, a smaller company, Protocol can afford to pay occasionally different artists or hire artists to pay for that. But a smaller company that doesn't have a whole lot of money, being able to generate something that is somewhat similar to that, or for folks to think about how much it would cost to pay a digital painter to create some of the things that you can create with DALL-E that are surreal with just a prompt. That this opens up a whole new realm of people being able to express themselves that I am much more of a fan of than I am worried about Getty Images not making as much money as they do right now. So when it comes to that, like stock photography, I still want photographers to make money, and I still want, the New York Times to have its staff of photographers. I don't think that's ever going to change, because there is value in that. But in the idea of democratizing creativity, I'm so much of a fan of what this could do.
Yeah. Yeah, not just from a perspective of replacing imagery either, which I do believe that there's a certain layer of people and use cases that this will probably be the easy replacement for, at least the first go-to before expanding out beyond. But maybe as inspiration, right? Because digital creatives might get a What was your prompt? The evil lemons, or what was it?
Spooky lemons. Spooky lemons.
Evil lemons. I want to see what evil lemons is, and they could battle each other. But spooky lemons, like a digital artist might have a hard time coming up with ideas around spooky lemons. This might be a launch pad, right? Go to DALL-E. Put in the thing, see, the grid of 9 images, or I don't know how DALL-E does it exactly.
To get some inspiration,
You get some inspiration. It's okay, these are some directions that I could go. And then to make something personalized and creative from that.
Collaborate with DALL-E. I love that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe at some point, DALL-E ends up creating its imagery with Photoshop layers embedded into it. And then, then you can remove things. I don't know. But
but seriously, the idea that you could then kind of edit it yourself or make adjustments to it as you want, because they've already got.
Goodness, that would be amazing.
They've already got the ability to, on top of just fully generating stuff, you can give it images that it then supplements. It'll add things to or subtract from, as long as, again, it's not, you can't upload a photo of, I don't know, Mariah Carey and do something with that, but you can upload an image that you took and say, add a couch to this.
Right. Or remove couches.
Yes, or remove all of the couches. Yes,
I'm anti-couch, so
not really big into couches. Could you kick that, please? I like to stand.
I hope that we get in on the wait list, and if we do, we'll talk about it a third time. We'll keep talking about it.
We will keep talking about it, especially when I can get the spooky lemons on there.
Yep.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back with my story of the week. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by our sponsor, Checkout.com. Tech should be groundbreaking and promote innovation. Traditional payment systems are heavily layered, they're disconnected, they're perceived as a cost center to the business. Modern businesses need flexible payment systems that can help them adapt to change, to grow, to scale fast. And we recently came across a company with tech that approaches payments through a radical new lens, and it's called Checkout.com. Checkout.com is a leading digital global payment solutions provider for brands like Shine, Grab, Sony Electronics, Wise, and Henkel. Checkout's flexible payments platform is purpose-built with performance, scalability, and speed in mind. It's ideal for businesses looking to seamlessly integrate better payment solutions globally. And with a dedicated team of local experts that are spanning 19 offices in 5 continents, Checkout.com offers a strategic partnership to help businesses improve their acceptance rates, optimize their payments performance, and grow their business globally. With Checkout.com, you're going to get global optimization. They provide local acquiring in multiple geographies, improving authorization rates and lowering costs. You'll get transparency. Their fee structure is clear and straightforward, while their in-depth reporting gives you visibility no matter where you operate. Local expertise. Their dedicated local teams bring regional, international, and regulatory expertise. That's a big one, allowing you to navigate market complexities with confidence. And strategic partnership. They take a collaborative, personalized approach to solving complex problems for their merchants and ecosystem partners. For me, I think that the reason Checkout.com can make a difference for you is because of what it enables in terms of payment methods. I know for me, when I go to a site and I see that Apple Pay is available on that site, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to end up going through with whatever purchase I was eyeballing. It's like window shop. And then I get to the cart and there's an Apple Pay button and I'm like, no, because I know I'm going to make that payment. I'm going to go ahead and get it because it makes it so simple, makes it so easy. And so that's why I end up just going for it. So Checkout.com can help enable not just Apple Pay, but all of these different payment methods that will make it so simple for your customers who are looking to buy whatever it is you're offering. So discover how Checkout.com can help your business thrive at checkout.com/TNW. That's checkout.com/TNW. All right. This morning, there was a news story published on TechCrunch and then in several other places about Amazon making a new purchase. The company is purchasing a company called One Medical. One Medical is basically a kind of medical doctor service where you can get 24/7 on-demand virtual care. You can get appointments in One Medical's offices, and they work with a lot of different insurance companies. So same and next day appointments, video appointments, longer appointments, which is a big thing that I know a lot of people kind of struggle with in your typical medical situations, drop-in lab services so that you can, hop in and get those lab tests done that you need to do. And it is a system that kind of is looking to turn healthcare on its head whenever it comes to kind of primary care. And that's doubled down. Amazon now buying it for $3.9 billion, where Amazon seems to want to continue down its role of offering different, of having rather different medical offerings. I think this is what's most interesting is that Amazon at one point bought this company that I absolutely loved. It still is kind of built into the system, but it's called PillPack. And PillPack used to be my pharmacy. And what was cool about PillPack is that you could not only get your prescriptions from your doctor sent to PillPack, but you could also get, if you took vitamins, so for example, I took fish oil and vitamin C or whatever each day, and PillPack would put them into these little compostable packs that had your day and your night medicine, and for each day. So Monday, for a whole month. And so you would kind of unwind your pill pack and tear it off, and you'd have that for the day. And it was just really handy to know I've got the medicine that I'm supposed to take today, the vitamins that I want to take today, and it's all right here. It's all as I need it, and I know that I've done what I needed to do. Amazon bought PillPack and then launched Amazon Pharmacy, and then has also made Amazon Care, which is its on-demand healthcare service. And it's clear, given they just had their ALEXA Live conference, the developer conference, where they showed quite a few different healthcare integrations between ALEXA and the healthcare provider. So I think that this is not a surprise to see Amazon making this purchase of One Medical as it continues to want to offer a medical service to folks who need it. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is eventually rolled into some sort of maybe even like a premium Prime plan where on top of your typical Amazon Prime, you get healthcare. And of course, this comes with loads of caveats because this is Amazon, and Amazon is known as a data gobbler. At the same time, I do want to acknowledge the potential positive that could be provided if folks who can't afford more traditional forms of healthcare would be able to have healthcare in this way. But of course, again, that comes with lots of caveats regarding how much Amazon is using that medical information to market to you and all that kind of stuff. But that aside, I mean, just this morning, I logged on to my healthcare provider, likely the same healthcare provider you have, Jason, and was greeted with some new prompts for a new privacy policy. And the second page was asking me if they could share my information with third parties so that they could market to me. And I thought, what a healthcare group is actually, so what I'm saying here is like, even if you are going with more traditional healthcare, we're, part of a big healthcare program, you're not necessarily any safer. And they may also be doing that. So just as a heads up to my fellow colleagues who are also part of the KP deal, when you log on to the website, you should decline when it asks you if they can give your data out, because that's what it's trying to do, and it's not great. But anyway, back to the story itself. Yes, there is a concern because it's Amazon, but I would be interested to see how the company could potentially provide healthcare in a way that is more affordable. And certainly if I didn't have the healthcare plan that I have now, where the pharmacy and all of that is kind of built into one company, I would still be using PillPack as my pharmacy because that was just the way that I did it, and it worked really well, even though it ended up being part of Amazon. And before we kind of break this into little conversation, I just wanted to mention that Apple, around a little bit before this new report, Apple put out a really big news article and PDF talking about what Apple is doing to support personal health research and care. And this guide walks through all sorts of stuff, including how it's making it so that your health data is available all in one place, how the Apple Watch can be an intelligent guardian for users' health by heart health monitoring, mobility monitoring, hearing health monitoring, and safety. So if you fall or something like that, and also if you need to call 911 or whatever your emergency services provider is. Making changes to your everyday health and fitness, giving access to third parties to health and fitness information to improve upon that, and then also helping on the sort of health ecosystem side by providing research studies that tie into the iPhone that make it very easy for people to participate in research studies. And one of my favorite features is the health records feature that Apple has in Apple Health, where my doctor is tied into my phone. And so I get my health records on my phone and can see. So the other day when I had to get tested for COVID, when I woke up in the morning, even before the Kaiser email had come through, I had already had the records on my phone and was able to see that I was negative for that and the two versions of flu that they were testing for. So I love that. But these big tech companies in general are looking at ways to both aid and also, of course, make money in health. And the last one I'll mention, just because this is the other one I was thinking of, is Google. I remember I don't remember which event it was, but at a recent event, talked about how they wanted to help with dermatology in particular, where when people are doing searches for things related to dermatology, that it does a better job of providing them with answers to the health issues that they are dealing with. And especially as it comes to people of color, and how dermatologically speaking, there's not as much data out there. So if I were to go look at what, type in like skin cancer spot or something like that, and if I were to look at it, most of the time it's going to be photos of white skin. And so trying to find that information and get more info about it that way is not great. So there's a part of me that likes that tech is playing a role in all of this. And of course, there's also the skeptical part of me that is concerned about our privacy and the security therein when it comes to how our stuff is being protected or how people will be helped. But again, when I wake up and my own healthcare provider is trying to ask me in what I felt was kind of a sly way if they could give my data to third parties, I'm like, well, clearly I'm not safe no matter where I am.
Yeah, right. Data is valuable no matter who it is, who you're talking about as far as the company is concerned. And health data is ridiculously valuable as well. It's also very by comparison to like search data and everything, it's also very controlled. There's actually regulation around controlling health data and health information and everything. So that at least puts some sense of control onto it. But that's probably what makes it even more valuable, is the lack of access to it.
Yeah, that's why they had to ask me this morning if they could use my health data, because it was part of HIPAA regulations. But if I consent without realizing it, then I've done that. And it was the way whenever I declined and up popped an alert that was like, are you sure you want to do this? Then I had to double check and reread to make sure that when I was saying I decline, that it really meant that I do not want you to share my data, as opposed to the other way. It all felt, what are those called? Dark patterns. It had some dark patterns. Yeah. And I was very disappointed. So yes, I'm glad that there are these regulations, and I think that because of the focus of our what is it that I'm looking for? Our lawmakers on big tech, I think that they will have to do what they can do to be as clear as possible and as straightforward as possible about all of this, because there's so much of a focus on them. But I don't want to get overly excited about this or say that it's too good of a thing, because we don't know what Amazon's going to do exactly, and I have to know for sure that the company isn't secretly using this as some data mining thing in some way that will make it so that's how it's being subsidized or what have you.
Yeah. And hard to imagine a company of Amazon's size, which is by, arguably one of the largest companies out there, not having some sort of data aspect to this, data mining of some sort, but I guess we don't actually know. I mean, the fact of the matter is healthcare in the United States, the healthcare system is just broken. It's just bad. If you don't have the money to afford basic human protection, then you're screwed. And so I'm open to ways to help people who can't afford healthcare to get access to healthcare if they don't have it already. I'm totally open to ways, but it has to also it can't be at the expense of some other very major thing that now suddenly we've completely made ourselves vulnerable in this different way. And I feel like that always ends up being the solution, and maybe that's just a pessimistic outlook, but it's kind of like, okay, great, you can have this, but you're gonna have to give us this. And it's like, it's always, and in other countries when it comes to healthcare, it's not nearly as manipulative as it feels like it is here in the US. And many times, from people from other countries looking on the outside in are aghast at what they see as far as like what we have to do here in order to get basic human care. So I don't know how I feel about Amazon, putting out their own, potentially putting out their own healthcare. Again, like you, if this is a system that we feel has enough checks in place that we can trust it, and it lowers the barrier so that a lot of other people that might not be able to get that protection can, then I'm all for it. But I guess that remains to be seen. I don't know what this is going to turn into. I see that PillPack is still around, though.
Yes.
Do you not use it for a particular reason? Like it's still
just because if
you don't mind me asking.
No, it's fine. I have Kaiser, and Kaiser has its own pharmacy, so
yeah,
it's just
okay,
I go to that one.
That's true. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, I guess we'll see. I mean, $3.9 billion. That's a pretty penny.
So. Quite a hefty. I mean, Amazon, you can acquire my services for $3.9
billion. Yes, I'll do everything in my power to give you the value that you're looking for. $3.9 billion. Anyways, we will follow that and so much more in future episodes of Tech News Weekly. We do the show every Thursday. So twit.tv/TNW, that's the show page on the web where you can find all the information to subscribe to the show in audio, video, YouTube. And then once you're subscribed, then you get our wonderful interviews and discussions like magic through the power of RSS. So do that, twit.tv/TNW.
And if you'd like to get all of our not all of our ads. If you'd like to get all of our shows ad-free, well, check out Club Twit, because for $7 a month, you get every single Twit show with no ads. You also get exclusive access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else. That's behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, and some fun content that the hosts upload from time to time, as well as access to the members-only Discord server. That's a place where you can go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members, but also those of us here at Twit. And, the chat has been live today there in the Discord. I should also mention that now, becoming a member of Club Twit, still for $7 a month, or for, let's see, twit.tv/Club Twit, $7 a month or $84 a year, you also are going to get access to Hands on Mac, my new show that publishes every Thursday, with loads of tips, tricks, etc., all relating to Apple. So it's called Hands on Mac, but it's iOS, iPadOS, it's watchOS, it's macOS, it's all the different ones. And the episode that's going out today is covering how to sign up for the public betas so that you can help shape the future of Apple's software. And again, still for $7 a month, you will also get access to Hands on Windows, which is Paul Thurrott's new show, where he is doing the same thing, but for Windows. So we continue to add more and more value to Club Twit. And, if you're not big into the Discord and all the other stuff, you don't care about having ad-free versions of those other shows or any of that, well, you can just subscribe for $2.99 a month to get hands on Mac and $2.99 a month to get hands on Windows. So if you're just it's called the single show plan. If you just want that show in particular, you can. But honestly, $7 a month and you get not only everything that you've been getting so far, but also these 2 new shows. Mind-boggling value, super awesome. And so, that's all available at twit.tv/clubtwit. These shows are also available as part of the Apple Podcast subscription, $2.99 a month. And you can get the ad-free version of Tech News Weekly that way as well. The audio feed in Apple Podcasts, you can tap to subscribe for $2.99 a month. If you would like to follow me online, I'm at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Now that the week is almost over, I don't have to list out so many shows. I can just say, catch me this Saturday for my second solo hosting of the Tech Guy radio show. That was a lot of fun the first time around, and we'll be doing it again this Saturday. And then on Tuesdays for iOS Today, which I record with Rosemary Orchard, and Thursdays outside of Tech News Weekly is Hands on Mac for those of you who are club members. Jason Howell, what about you?
If you haven't realized out there, listeners and viewers of this show, Micah's a busy guy. So you got your hands full. That's all I'm saying. I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter. I filled in for Leo on This Week in Google yesterday. It was an awesome show. So definitely check that out. twit.tv/TWIG. I also do All About Android for the network. twit.tv/AAA. And actually this upcoming week on All About Android, we're going to have Florence Ion on the show, and she's bringing some hardware that you're going to want to hear some reviews for. So we've got Flo's Hardware Shack coming up on Tuesday. Big thanks to everyone at the studio for helping us do this show. John Ashley, of course, behind the scenes doing so much to help us with this show each and every week. Burke testing people, making sure the technology works. And thanks to you, all of you out there, for watching and listening. We could not do this without you. You are super important to us, so we thank you for returning each and every week. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I'm joined by Tarek Malik, the editor-in-chief over at Space.com, in our new This Week in Space podcast. Every Friday, Tarek and I take a deep dive into the stories that define the new space age. What's NASA up to? When will Americans once again set foot on the moon? And how about those samples from the Perseverance rover? When are those coming home? What the heck has Elon Musk done now? In addition to all the latest and greatest in space exploration, we'll take an occasional look at bits of spaceflight history that you probably never heard of, and all with an eye towards having a good time along the way. Check us out on your favorite podcatcher.